praying with people?
Now it's live.
Anyway, that's for off the record. So the Basi Legani series of the Friedrich Rebbe, we're all familiar. What does it talk about? What's our purpose? What's the role? Which is to make a home for Hashem in this world. How do we do that? By bending or breaking unholiness or transforming it to holiness, right? Skafia, Sitra Achra, then is the Stalik Yikar Kutra Brich B'Cholam. The Rebbe's first mimer from Tafshin Yirale from 1951 focuses on that idea. Then the Friedrich Rebbe in his mimer in chapter 2 moves on to how do we see this in practice? What is this transformation of the physical world into a home for God? So the Friedrich Rebbe goes through, says, we see the Basi Mikdash, the main place where this transformation occurred, where we made a home for Hashem, was in the physical world. Where, specifically in the Beis HaMikdash, in the Mishkan of the Beis HaMikdash. So in the Beis HaMikdash, what was the central avodah, the central service of the Beis HaMikdash was karbanis, sacrifices. What is a carbon? You take an animal and you bring it to Hashem, you transform it. You take an unkosher, not unkosher, obviously a kosher animal that's fit for a carbon, but that's a physical thing, and you make it something holy. You make it a reach nichayach l'Hashem. Okay, that's number one. Number two, he says that in the Mishkan, the Mishkan was made of atzei shittim, right? Acacia wood. The word atzei shittim, shtus, means foolishness. So another form of transformation is to transform the foolishness of this world into foolishness of kedusha, right? The example he brings from the Gemara about celebrating, dancing in front of the Kala, celebrating with the Kala, which is a mitzvah. That they would do it in a way that the Chachamim they didn't approve of it because they felt it was beneath the dignity of a great sage to behave that way, until eventually they realized this Pasuk Amuda Denura Beinoila when he passed away, they realized that there was Ahana Shtus Elasava. You see this idea of Shtus, the Kedusha, meaning going above and beyond, serving Hashem in a way of Shtus, of foolishness. So you have foolishness that's below intellect, and then there's foolishness that actually goes beyond intellect. Okay, that's the next topic. Then he goes on to explain how we see that in the Mishkan itself, in the word itself. The Atzei Shittim, what were they used for in the Mishkan? They were used to make what? The krushim, the beams, right? The walls of the Mishkan were made out of individual beams that were put in the Adonim in the sockets. So those beams, what are they called? Krushim. The singular is keresh. That's the name of the pillar. And the Friedrich Rebbe explains that the idea, the word keresh, has the same letters as the word sheker, right? And the point is to take sheker, which is a lie, and transform it into keresh, into a beam for the Beis Hamikdash. Transform a line to that. And then the Friedrich Rebbe goes into details, and that's where we're at now in these chapters. In the Maimer, goes into the details of the word keresh. The word keresh, or the word sheker, is made up of 3 letters, right? Kuf, Reish, and Shin. So in chapter 6, the Friedrich Rebbe talks about this idea, the Kuf, Reish, and the Shin, and we'll get into it as we read in the Rebbe's text. The Rebbe gives a little summary of it, so we won't get into the details now. And then in chapter 7, so the Friedrich Rebbe first goes into the meaning of the word. He says like this, that Reish and Shin, Reish and Kuf are letters of unholiness from the other side. Okay, Shin is a letter from holiness. We'll address this Zohar in a moment inside. And they have the opposite of those. The other end of the spectrum of the holy letters are Dalid and Hey. Dalid is similar to the Reish, and Hey is similar to the Kuf, right? With slight differences. So first he goes into the meaning of Dalid and Reish, that they mean the same thing. They seem to mean the same thing, but they're different. One is in holiness, one's in unholiness. And then he goes into the difference in their shape. This is in chapter 6 still. That the difference in the shape between the Dalid and the Reish is what? Just a Yud. Right? The Yud represents bittul, nullification, self-nullification, as we're going to say in the Maimer, Aziras Garma, making yourself small. Right? So when you make yourself small, that's bittul, and that's what the Dalit has that the Reish doesn't have. The Reish is poor, but he's not buttul. He doesn't have that humility. The Dalit, which is in holiness, it has humility, has that bittul. The Yud that represents bittul. And the Friedrich Rebbe goes on in the end of chapter 6 to explain that when it comes to receiving, we want to learn. He gives an example of a mashpia and a makabel, the Talmud and a Rav. So when the teacher is teaching, in order for the student to understand, you need to make yourself small, right? He quotes that from the Gemara that what? second. Talking about first the makabel, the receiver. The student has to be made small. What does that mean? That if you want to learn, it says leit timsa, right? The Gemara says you're not going to find Torah by somebody who's from the Gasei Ruach, somebody who's arrogant, and not even somebody who's marchiv daitel, somebody who feels good about themselves even when they're learning. In other words, they're not necessarily arrogant, they're not Bali Gaiva, they're not Gasei Ruach, but they're enjoying their learning, they're overly enthusiastic in a way that they feel their own pleasure in it. You're not going to find Torah there either. How do you learn Torah? You have to be a complete, like an empty cup. Clean, right? Like it says, clean male. And a full cup you can't fill up a full cup. There's no room for it to absorb. An empty cup fills up. You have to be like an empty cup. Interestingly, the chayzrim, the people that were charged with memorizing the Rebbe's talks, the Rebbe's Fabrengens, there's a whole team of them. This goes back. The idea of a chayzer, the people that would review the teachings of the Rebbeim, goes back all the way to the Alter Rebbe, who set up a whole group of them as a whole. So this is something part of Chabad tradition. So the chayzrim would say, how do you remember a whole Fabrengen? The Rebbe spoke for many hours. The Rebbe spoke about topics that the people that are reviewing it might not even be familiar with. Gemaras or Zoyars or Midrashim, they didn't know all of these things necessarily. And how do you remember everything and all the quotes? So the way to do it, they would say, obviously you need to be gifted. Assuming they work very hard on developing your mind. But the key was to simply not process anything. When the Rebbe spoke, you didn't process. You stood just like a goylam in a sense, just absorbing the information. You didn't process it. The Rebbe said something, you asked a question, you didn't try and understand the question. You didn't analyze it. You weren't taking a step at where is he going with this. You just listened. The analysis comes afterwards. Once you've recorded it, then you analyze. But the key to retaining the information, to remember, to be able to review if I bring it properly, was to simply, like we said here, the yud of the dalid. Make yourself small, non-existent, right? Not only that you're not from the Gasei Ruach, but not even marchiv daitela. You're not even enjoying it necessarily at the time. It's just absorbing. Just absorbing, no processing. Okay, that's Ois Vav. In Ois Zayin, the Friedrich Rebbe turns his attention to the other component of the Yud that's in the back of the Dalit. Yeah. The chapters of the Friedrich Rebbe's. Yeah, the 20 chapters of the Friedrich Rebbe's Maimer. So chapter 7, which is this year's focus, Friedrich Rebbe turns his attention to the other aspect of the Ois Yud, which is in the Mashpia, and the teacher, not just in the Makabel. And let's learn this inside. So let's start. I don't know how far we'll get today, but this is a little bit of background to jump into the Maimer. So you should have copies. The Rebbe's Maimer, Basi Legani, Tafshin Yud Zayin. Okay. Basi Legani Achesi Kalo. The pasuk Shir Hashirim says, Basi Legani, I've come to my garden, Achesi Kalo, my sister, my bride. So the Isa Medrash Rabbah bim Koimoi Legani Legani. The Medrash Rabbah in this place, meaning on the verse, says Legani, my garden, Lugnuni, to my palace. The Iker Shchina b'tachtainim haisa. The Iker Shchina was down here. So, so a few things. Let's before we get into it. Just interesting. So Chassidim, we're not going to do much of this. We're going to try and just understand Rebbe's words, try as to the best of our ability. But just because it's why not? Since we're just getting warmed up here, so Chassidim, you find all kinds of interesting allegories and hints in the Maimer. So there's a vart I saw from somebody, I remember from where, but Basi, the word Basi, which is the opening of the Rebbe's Maimer, the word Basi has, the word is a Rashi Tevis for the four things that the Rebbe really instituted. The Friedrich Rebbe instituted learning Chitas, but something that the Rebbe fortified and made something that everybody has to do and encourage everybody to learn Chitas. And of course the Rebbe's own initiative, which was Rambam, learning Rambam, the daily study. So all four of these things, Chitas is Chumash, Tehillim, and Tanya, and Rambam, 4 studies. These 4 books are alluded to in the first word, Basi. These 4 innovations of daily study that the Rebbe instituted and encouraged are here. The Torah, Chumash, begins with a Beis, Bereshis, right? Tehillim begins with an Aleph, Ashrei, right? And Tanya begins with Tanya, right? Perek Aleph of Tanya begins with Tanya B'Sefer Gimel. The first letter is Tav, and then Yud, and also goes in order here. And then the Yud, which is the first word in the first halacha of Rambam, you say this Vamuda Chachmes, right? Also begins with the Yud. Stam, that's one remez in Basi Legani for whatever that's worth. And another one is the Friedrich Rebbe brings in his Maimer Bim Koimoi. Isa b'Medrash Rabbah Bim Koimoi. That the Medrash Rabbah says on the verse What does the Medrash Rabbah say on the verse? That the Iker Shchina B'tachtoinim Haisa, the main Shchina was down here in this world, and then through the 7 sins, the 7 generations sinned, and it banished the Shchina from this world up till the first heaven, and then the 7 Tzaddikim brought it back down, till Moshe brought it down to this world, right? That's the Medrash. This Medrash, Iker Shchina B'tachtoinim Haisa, appears throughout the Medrash. It appears in a number of places in the Medrash. This is not the only place it appears. It appears earlier in the Medrash. But the emphasis on Medrash Rabbah b'mkoimoi, why Medrash Rabbah specific? Why does he have to specify? Because you can find it in a number of places in the Medrash. Why on the verse? Because what's interesting is that on the verse in Shir HaShirim where this teaching appears, and like we said, this teaching appears several places in the Medrash. Here in the Medrash, this teaching is taught by Reb Menachem Chasnei Reb Elazar. Reb Menachem is obviously, we know the significance of that name, the Rebbe's first name, Chasnei, the son-in-law. So that's just another interesting thing. The Frierdiker Rebbe is the first to say Bimkoimai in his Maimer, and the Rebbe would repeat it always in the Maimer of Yisem Medrash Rabbi Bimkoimai. Another remez, which we'll get to in a moment, is Kol Hashvin Chavivin. So there's a practical reason why that statement is brought. Kol Hashvin Chavivin, that all 7 are beloved, is not part of this Medrash of Iker Shechina B'Achlein. It just says Moshe is the 7th and brought the Shechina down here. It doesn't say over there Kol Hashvin Chavivin. That's something that's from a different place in the Medrash. It's a different Medrash that the Frierdiker Rebbe inserts in his Maimer. The Rebbe inserts in his Maimer and would always mention it. Kol Hashvin Chavivin, us being obviously the 7th generation, the Rebbe being the 7th Rebbe, our generation being the Doir Hashvi, the 7th generation. Okay, now enough with the Ramazim, and now back into the text. We have a few minutes here. Okay. So the Medrash says like this. The Pasuk says, Basi Legani, I came to my garden, which seems to be a contradiction. I came means that I've already been there. I came means I'm coming back. That's how the Medrash understands the word Basi. Basi mean I was there, and now I came back. I came back to my garden. So what does it mean I came back to my garden? Did I just come? Or was I... What's going on here? So the Medrash explains, what does it mean that I came back to my garden? That the Iker Shechina B'Tachtonim Haisa, that when Hashem created the world, the Shechina was here in his garden, in this world. He was here in this world. And now, he's coming back. So what does that mean that he was here and he came back? That in the beginning of creation, the Shechina was down in this world. And in the first Maimer Tafshin Aleph, the Rebbe discusses at length the idea of Iker Shechina, the significance of Iker Shechina, what level of Shechina we're talking about, the highest level, the light, the Erin stuff, the level that's even before Tzimtzum, the highest level of revelation was present in this world. And we're specifically B'Tachtonim in our reality, in our world. Then Ela Shalidei Chetei Tzadas, through the Chetei Tzadas, the first sin of the tree of knowledge, V'Achatoim Shal Achrav, and the sins that came afterwards, the sin of Cain, the sin of their Enish, as the Medrash enumerates in the Medrash. Silko es HaShechina, they banished the Shechina min ha'aretz ad l'riki ha'zayin. They banished the Shechina, which, as we said, what's Shechina? Is the Iker Shechina. The Rebbe explains Iker Shechina. Shechina is a term that describes a level of revelation. And what level? We're talking about Iker Shechina, the highest level of revelation. They banished it all the way up, ad l'riki ha'zayin, till the 7th heaven. Kifishim Mefarish B'Medrash, as the Medrash explains. Then through the Avodah of the Tzaddikim that came afterwards, beginning with Avram Avinu, they were able to bring and draw the Shechina from heaven, from above to below, till Moshe, who is the 7th. And all 7th are beloved. He brought it down from the first heaven down to this world. Which is the purpose of all the bringing down the Shechina, drawing it down from the 7th heaven all the way down to the first heaven, down to our world. The whole point is to bring it into this world. That's the simple meaning why the Frierdiker Rebbe and the Rebbe would always call it Kol Hashvin Chavivin, because what Moshe did is like fundamentally different than what all the 6 tzaddikim before him did. The first time the Rebbe talks about the mile of the first one, right? Avram Avinu, who initiated the process. But the point is, the main achievement is in this world, bringing the Shechina from the 7th heaven to the 6th heaven, and from the 6th to the 5th, from the 7th to the 6th, and from the 2nd to the 1st is not such a big difference. The fundamental difference occurs when you bring it from the first heaven down to Aretz, to Tachtin. That's why he brings the Kol Hashvin Chavivin. There's something special about the 7th that brings it down, because that's the whole point, is bringing it down here Lamata Ba'aretz. Okay. So Moshe brings the Shechina down Lamata Ba'aretz. The main revelation of the Shechina, this idea that the Shechina comes down, the Basi Legani, that I come back down to this world, where did that happen? Where was that manifest most? In the Mishkan. that was in the desert, the tabernacle in the desert, and the Beis HaMikdash. Kamesha Kosov, like the pasuk says, "V'asol li migdash v'shachanti b'seicham," build for me a migdash, a temple, and I shall dwell in them. Hainu sha'alidei hamikdash nasa v'shachanti gam b'seich kol echad ve'echad. That through the migdash, the Eibusher by extension not only was revealed down here, rested in the actual physical Beis HaMikdash, but b'seich kol echad ve'echad in every single one of us as well. Right, which is ultimately one of the points of the Maimer, is the idea of how this is relevant to us in our day-to-day life. The idea of Asli Migdash still applies today. Even though we don't have an actual physical Beis HaMikdash, but we have the Beis HaMikdash within ourselves. We have to bring the Shekhinah within ourselves, within the world. And this is done how? Al Yidei Avodas HaTzadikim. As tzaddikim, which we know, Amich Kulam tzaddikim, every Yid is a tzaddik, right? That tzaddikim, what do? Kefishim var ba'al hilula barucha ba'maimer shal yem hilula, as the Friedrich Rebbe explains at length in his maimer, as we called it, the maimer of the hilula, of his legacy maimer, that the maimer HaZoyar, the Zoyar says, Kadeskafia sitra achra v'sapcha sitra achra, istalik yikodet kudrabricha b'chulu almin, that how is it that we bring the revelation down here? We're going to finish this point. It's through breaking and transforming unholiness. Through that is istalik. The divine presence, the divine glory is expressed, is revealed in all worlds. Okay, we'll stop here, I guess, right? Run up against davening. Stop here.